there, algebra fans. Mr. Chu's here with a Math Minute with Mr. Chu. Let's talk about completing a square. So we're talking about completing the square of a polynomial, of a quadratic. So if you like my videos, give it a thumbs up. Share it with a friend. Forward it to someone. Let them know Mr. Chu wants to help you learn the math. And subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps me move out more videos to more people. So when we're completing a square, we have to think about the standard form of a quadratic. So I'm dealing with an ax squared plus bx plus c. The fact that it's to the second power means it's a quadratic. In completing the square, you have to make sure in step 1 that a equals 1. So if it doesn't, you have to divide by the coefficient in front of the x squared so that it is 1. And problem 2 will be an example that shows you how to do that. So on your first step, you must have a equals 1. So in step 1, a must equal 1, which means I'm going to have an x squared plus a bx. Now, you can have a plus c here. That's just a constant. That's just a number. But this is what your variables need to look like. All right? So on step 2, I have to find what 1/2 of b is. So I find 1/2 of b, which can sometimes, it's helpful to write it as b over 2. It's the same thing. Divide something by 2, you're getting half of it. Then step 3, I have to find out what that 1/2 b squared is. Remember, you can do b over 2 squared. And then step 4, you add and subtract this number that you found here to both to the x squared term. To your x squared plus bx term. All right, and the reason you do that, it means that it still equals 0, but you've created a situation now that you can square it, and then you have written it like this: x squared plus bx plus b over 2 squared minus b over 2 squared. And then when you have written it like that, then I can break this apart into x plus b over 2 quantity squared, and then it's going to be minus this b over 2 squared term here. Now you're saying, oh, that's just a bunch of steps, Mr. Chu. I know it is. That's why it's important now to look at examples. All right? So we're going to do 2 problems, and then I'm going to challenge you with a couple problems on the end for you to try on your own, and then I'll have another video that talks about them. All right, so I have problem 1 is x squared plus 6x. And we're going to go through all of these 6 steps. X squared plus 6x. So what I need to do is, I need to turn this into a perfect square. Now, in your mind, you might be saying, yeah, but why do I need to do this? This is a complicated topic in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, carries over into pre-calc that most algebra students struggle with. You need to know how to do this before you can prove the quadratic formula. And you need this in Algebra 2 when you're talking about finding the equations of circles and manipulating an equation so that you can find the center and the radius of a circle. So those are things that are coming. So let's just talk about it right now. So, step 1, does A equal 1? Well, remember, we're dealing with ax squared plus bx plus c. And in this case, my A is 1. So this is my first thing. A is 1. See how that's 1 x squared? My B is 6. My C is 0 in this case. That is really unnecessary right now. I'm just telling you that so that you know. All right, so I'm going to erase this 1 because there's my original problem. We'll erase this standard form here. And now we'll go to step 2. Step 2 said find 1/2 of b, which equals b over 2. So my b is 6. So 6 over 2 equals 3. I just found that. Nothing hard yet. Number 3, it says find 1/2 of b squared, or b over 2 squared, which equals 3 squared, which equals 9. All right? Step 4, add and subtract 1/2 b squared to the x squared plus bx. So let's go over here. Here's my x squared plus bx, x squared plus 6x. And I'm going to add 1/2 of b squared and subtract 1/2 of b squared to that. So I'm going to add 1/2 of b squared, which is 3 squared, and I'm also going to subtract that. So when I add 9 and subtract 9, I get my original 1 back, which is what I want. All right, so now I'm going to rewrite this just so that I can emphasize what's going on here. And this ends up being a 9 here, but I'm going to just leave it as 3 squared. This now is a perfect square, meaning that I can write this as a factor of what multiplied by itself is going to be x squared is x. What multiplied by itself is going to be 3 squared or 9, which is 3. And there it is. Which is what I did here. The x plus my b squared over 2 squared minus my b over 2 squared. So you may say, okay, but what does that mean? The meaning when you use this is going to come from Algebra 2. I'm just showing you how to physically do it, right? Now you say, yeah, but is this really equal to this? Well, x plus 3 squared means x plus 3 times x plus 3. And then we're going to subtract 9 on the end. And we're saying we're going to get x squared plus 6x on there. You use FOIL now. So when I use FOIL, first, x times x is x squared. Outer, x plus 3x is 3x. Inner, 3 times x is 3x. And then the last, 3 times 3 is 9, minus 9. I have like terms here and like terms here. So this becomes x squared plus 6x plus 0. There it is. Your x squared plus 6x, x squared plus 6x. That was problem 1. Now that was an easy one. Now we go to a little bit harder one. You're saying, how can it be harder? It can be harder if my A is not 1. So now we'll go to problem 2. Problem 2 is 2y squared minus 6y. First thing I have to say is, look at 1. Is A equal to 1? No. So we have to make it so that it looks like 1. And you do that by dividing by that coefficient, which ends up being the GCF. And if you reverse the distributive property, you see you get that. Now we just follow all these rules step by step with this portion right here, not forgetting that you got to multiply it by 2 whenever we check it on the end. Okay, so what are we going to do now? We're just dealing with this part here now. What does A equal? 1. What does B equal? -3. So, on the side here, we'll say step 1 now. For this portion just right here, A does equal 1. B equals -3. So in step 3, and C equals 0 in this case. Sometimes there's a number there and you just have to put the number out there. All right, so now step 3, find 1/2 of B and then square that, or B over 2 squared. So this is B over 2 squared would equal -3 over 2 squared, which is 9/4. Everybody see that? Step 4, I'm going to add and subtract that number I just found on step 3 to my part inside of here. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this now. I'm going to write 2, and I'm going to put this little brace here, because inside of here I'm going to have y squared minus 3y, and now I'm going to add -3/2 squared, and I'm going to subtract -3/2 squared. Okay? All right. Now, what am I going to do? I am going to break this down. I rewrote it. My next step was to rewrite this so that I have y squared minus 3y plus -3/2 squared minus the -3/2 squared. All I did was now group these first 3 together so that I have my terms that I'm going to unsquare or complete the square on. So if you look, it says x plus whatever's in the parentheses here, quantity squared, minus that number, so it's 2 times my y plus -3/2 squared minus a -3/2 squared, so that's minus 9/4. So now let's figure out what this is. So if I, and this is, the square goes on the outside here. So -3/2 added means subtracting, because plus the opposite is just like when you're subtracting. There's your completed square right there. We can't forget about multiplying by this 2 here. So we got this bracket here. And when you check that, square that out, then subtract it and multiply it by 2, you're going to end up getting this. Try it on your own. All right, so I am going to put you up a couple challenge problems and see if you can try these on your own. I know it's a tough topic and it's hard for students in an algebra class. That's why it took me about, how many minutes? 15 minutes just to explain it. But use all these steps and you'll get it. So the next video is called MM6A. MMW 6a. Complete the square. Here's problem 1. Y squared minus 10y. You're trying to find out what that's going to equal. Problem 2a now. It's 6x squared plus 9x. So since a is not 1, you're going to have to factor that out. Get a fraction a little bit harder. So try these. Pause it now and try it if you want, and then I'll have a video that shows you the solution after you start the video back up. There is a link up here. It's going to be called MMW 6A to find these. Remember, I'm Mr. Chew. We just completed the square with Math Minutes with Mr. Chew. Tell your friends. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like this video, forward it on, and I'll see you in the next video.